Welcome in to 11 Personnel, presented by our good friends at Monticello Bank. They've been in business for over 125 years because at Monticello Bank, it's where people matter. They're the best out there, whether you're looking for a little personal financial needs like a new car, looking for a home loan, they'll take you covered, business, investing in your future. They'll do whatever you need to put the numbers on your side. They're in 25 counties across the Commonwealth. Check them out today. Monticello Bank, NBCBank.com. And today, I'm your man, Nick Roush, and my normal co host, Adam Luckett, isn't here. So we're changing things up a little bit. We have a couple guests on, and we're starting with our good friend from Nashville HQ at the Hard Count. It's on threes, JD Picell. JD, welcome to this program. Happy to have you on. How are we doing today? How's on three looking?
Yeah, it's good, man. As you can see behind me, a lot of life. It's like it's just a teeming sanctuary of activity back there. But dude, this is awesome. I'm so fired up to be on with you and talk some ball. And you said it before we got on, man. We're kind of like head first now into talking season, which is a little bit funny because there's nothing really happening, but also it means that college football season's around the corner, man. So I'm fired to be on with you.
Yeah, no, the SEC media days, it's here or it's right around the corner. It'll be here before you know it. So I'm fired up for it. I'm also like in this weird spot too, where our normal person who handles all the technology is driving back from Omaha. So I'm figuring this out as we go, but I'm promising that it's going to be great. Yeah, like I'm promising that even though I don't know how the sound works, I have no idea how any of this is working, um, if it's working at all or not.
It
Oh,
sounds
it's not
great to
even.
me.
Oh,
It
it sounds
sounds
great to
great to
you.
me. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sorry because I just read your text that it sounds a little bit funny on your end, so that's what I was responding to for the people
Okay.
that are like, "Why is this dude jumping on his phone while he's like on camera with another
All
person?"
good.
So that was. I mean, it sounds good to me. If it sounds
Okay.
good to you, but is it manageable? Are we able to soldier on, or what's the best
Okay.
course? I can
It's good to
also.
everybody else. That's what
Okay,
matters.
okay.
So we'll go from there. They can hear me. That's what's important. I turned it up. They can't hear me. They can hear me now. All right, we're good to go. All right, JD. I'm going to make fun of you later, but before we get into that, I don't want to dive right into the Kentucky takes. I want to talk big picture SEC because I feel
Sure.
like we spend so much time focusing on the very small details. We gotta balloon out to the big picture. And the biggest thing that's different about this talking season for me, JD, is when I look at preseason rankings, I see instead of 7 teams in each division and what order they're in, I'm seeing just 16 strewn out, right? And
Hmm.
it's taking my brain a second to figure out like, oh gosh, how's this going to work? So what I wanted to do is Phil Steele, he had his list of 16 SEC teams and he put them in order. But he did the coward's way out and he clumped them together and he made a bunch of different ties. So I think the ties are lame. We're not doing ties. Okay, we're
Hmm.
we're gonna do we're gonna break those ties.
Love it.
So okay, at the top we have Texas, Alabama, and Georgia. JD, tell me which one of those has the clearest path to be dominant. And do you think we have a scenario this year where there is a dominant SEC team, or is there going to be some carnage in this first year of the 16-team league?
I think there's going to be some carnage because I mean we're looking at Georgia's schedule earlier today. To me, they are the best team in the SEC. I think today they're the best team in America. But when you talk about like them being dominant and running the table and going 12-0, like it's gonna be tough to do. They're at Ole Miss, they're at Texas, they're at Alabama. Like that in itself is a road show. They got 5 top 20 teams preseason on the schedule, so like it is going to be anything but a cakewalk. And then also, people use the expression "life happens." Like football happens too. You have people get injured, like they saw last year with Brock Bowers and Lad McConkey. So I think that if there were a team that was going to be dominant that could run the table, to me, that's Georgia. But again, I think one loss is probably a reasonable projection, which is right around what Vegas says. Um, But of that group, I like Georgia, then Texas. I don't want to get ahead of us here, but Nick, I'd put Ole Miss ahead of Bama. Am I crazy there to say that Ole Miss right now is
Ooh.
better positioned for success than Bama preseason?
I so that's that's the part where it's like, how much do you trust Kalen DeBoer as a play caller, and
Mm-hmm.
in how much do the Ole Miss portal additions play into, like, how much do you trust them, because they did have a lot, but from a culture standpoint, like, does that work?
Yeah.
And where is that game this year? Is that at? Do we know? Is Ole Miss at Alabama, or is it at Ole Miss?
I believe it's at Ole Miss. Let me double check for us here because I love using the internet here.
Oh no,
Ole
it's a
Miss.
live stream.
Oh, you
Oh
know what?
gosh.
They don't even play this year. I'm
Oh,
tripping. Yeah, okay, so they don't play.
see, and
I got
that's
all
another
ahead of
part we got to
myself.
get used to. They're
It's
West
crazy.
teams. They're supposed to be playing each other. Yeah, but
It's ridiculous.
I, I, yeah. So my other part too, because I think a lot of people do group those three at the top. But Ole Miss and Missouri are in a similar boat where they would be fun dark horse picks. They would be in the old divisions. Missouri would be the dark horse pick to win the East. Ole Miss would be the dark horse pick to win the West. But you're ready to go ahead and ride with Kiffin and trust Jackson Dart and Co. over that. That's a bold take.
My only trouble with trusting Alabama right now, because I think the offense is going to be magic. Like, I think Jalen Milroe, Kalen DeBoer, I wasn't sure about it at first. I've slowly but surely started to see the light. I think they will do Goodwill Hunting kind of numbers. The defense is what concerns me, Nick. Like, I don't think we're going to have the Saban-esque sort of defenses we've come to expect from that side of the football over the course of the last 15 years. They bring back 33% production from last year's squad. So there's a lot of talented dudes in that roster for sure. There's still a lot of stars that are left in the cupboard from Nick Saban's exodus, but that's a lot of young bucks you're asking to play at a high level in this new SEC that is going to be very Hunger Games-ish. So I think right now I feel like I know more about Ole Miss, and you mentioned it. The key determining factor is, do they have that chemistry as a team? Can they put all the pieces together? It's like an IKEA chair. Got the pieces, but the instructions are a little bit wonky. It might take a few months to get this chair to work. But overall, right now, I feel like Ole Miss has a little bit more insurance in the Alabama defense.
So I love your confidence in Ole Miss, because that helps provide some clarity to the sort of next tier of teams. And Phil has them lumped together with Missouri, Oklahoma, and Tennessee and LSU. He's got four teams tied at fifth. And I'm having a hard time with LSU in life after Jaden Daniels. They're the one specifically out of all of these that I just can't. I don't like. I, I can't. I can't rationalize their success after seeing how bad the defense was. But at the same time, in the back of my mind, knowing that, like, Brian Kelly's been pretty damn good for them. So are you? How do you sort them amongst the Tennessees, Oklahomas, and Missouris of the world? Because I kind of think that Missouri's best off of them all, if nothing, if for no other reason, just because their schedule is so wide open.
That's a very good point. The schedule part of things, I don't know that I had considered quite as much, because that probably
Mm-hmm.
does favor Missouri. My hesitation, just going one by one here with Missouri,
Yeah,
last year they had 4 wins by 1 score. And I love
yeah,
Magic, like Harry Potter. I watched all the movies, read all the books. I don't know that you can bottle that up year in and year out after losing your DC, who is now at LSU. So for me, when I look at LSU, I'm like, okay, it's very reasonable to assume that the offense may not be the best offense in the country after losing 3 first picks. That's probably fair. Now,
yeah.
I also don't think the defense is going to be 105th in total defense in the country. So what's the trade-off here? How much does that LSU offense step back, and how much does that defense improve? I think if I were to just rank between those two, I'd probably lean LSU for the reasons I just mentioned. Also, Missouri lost Cody Schrader, and they were a
Yep.
55% run the ball team. He was a 1,600-yard rusher. I love Luther Burden. I love Brady. Let him cook. But I don't know exactly how that will look going into this upcoming season with kind of more of a bullseye on their back. So I think I go LSU, then maybe I go Missouri. Who we ranking here? Oklahoma and who else?
Tennessee and Oklahoma, which I would
Man,
assume Tennessee you would have we would have higher than Oklahoma because I mean Oklahoma added a bunch of transfers to the line and Tennessee I don't know. I just trust Nico with Josh Heupel. That offense is going to get a bunch of yards. So yeah, it's tough rolling the dice with some of those guys out there. I'm just glad that you're on my side with Missouri though, because I've caught a lot of flack from Missouri fans who just assume that there's no regression to the mean after one score wins, and that losing Blake Baker is something you can just be fine with, right? Like that could be the difference in what we're talking about right now. Like, oh, one team has Blake Baker, the other one doesn't. Therefore, LSU is going to be better than Missouri. Boom.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And 58% production back on defense. Like you lose your DC and a pretty heavy chunk of that defense that was awesome for you last year. Like I like Missouri. I love Coach Drink. I think he's a fun listen whenever he jumps on the mic. I don't know that I trust him as much as maybe the national narrative is right now. Going back to Tennessee, Nick, I might do bookends there between Oklahoma and Tennessee. Like I might put Tennessee ahead of LSU just behind Ole Miss because I love Nico. And I might put Oklahoma because I don't know about the offensive line and I don't know about Jackson Arnold just yet. So I might put them behind Missouri, if we're being honest here.
I just can't live in a world where Tennessee stays good for long. And I want to get back to the world where Jeremy Pruitt is stuffing cash in McDonald's bags, Like can we not that was such a fun time. And now it doesn't seem like Josh Heupel's slowing down anytime soon. So here's the thing: what if something goes wrong for Tennessee? What is it? Because we like to call Nico the volleyball player on this podcast, Mr. Picell. But I think he's going to hit, right? Like I think he's going to hit. I think it's going to work out. So what if it doesn't work out for Tennessee this year? Is it just specifically injury based, or are there question marks in that run game that could be big enough that they can't overcome?
Yeah, I think the two questions for me are the secondary is brand new, which they weren't a strength previously, was Tennessee's secondary, but it is a bunch of brand new dudes. So, like, is it 2022 all over again where you score a bunch of points but can't stop anybody because, you're just getting dog walked defensively? I think that's possible. I do think that front seven is better than 2022. The other concern you mentioned, like the offensive line, I don't think is massively deep. I don't know that that'll be a strength of this offense, but at the same time, what Josh Heupel does so effectively offensively is like compensate for maybe the talent gap that exists between Tennessee previously and other, big boys in the SEC. So I think if there's something that goes wrong, the secondary just is a total whiff and they have issues stopping anybody in the pass game and they just get into shootouts. And, it's tough. It's tough getting in drag races when you're going for the better part of, a 12-game season. So I think that's probably the culprit for me.
And the thing is though, JD, is that they're pretty good at winning drag races too, right?
Yeah.
They showed us that first year with Heupel. Now when we I'm going through Phil Steele's list. Up next, he had A&M at 9, Florida at 10, and then which I guess so. But I'm going to lump in Florida, South Carolina, Kentucky, and Auburn together because whenever I look at preseason stuff, it's kind of a dealer's choice on who you're buying more stock in versus the other. And I feel like Auburn is getting a lot of that second year Hugh Freeze sort of bump where, hey, Peyton Thorne isn't the best quarterback, but you know what? He's getting a second year under here, and he's just he's got a high floor. If he cuts back the turnovers, he could be productive. So I kind of buy that, but what is it like? Kentucky's got probably outside of Florida, I think Kentucky's got the most difficult schedule of the bunch. But what's stopping Kentucky from being the best of that bunch? I mean, they're pretty good at beating up on Florida as of late.
Yeah.
They were good at beating up on South Carolina until Beamer came to town. So what's stopping Kentucky from being the best of that bunch? What do they have to do to be head and shoulders better than the rest?
That's a really good question. My initial knee jerk reaction is like Brock Vandergriff ends up being the 5-star quarterback that he was billed as coming out of high school. And to me,
Yeah,
like, is that crazy of an ask? Like, is it a wild thought that someone we haven't seen play football yet might actually be really good at football? He was just at Georgia. Like, I don't think
yeah.
that's a stretch. So to
That's
me, like,
that's a fair
I would,
like that's a fair assessment. Just like, hey, this guy who is awesome just wasn't as awesome as Carson Beck and Stetson Bennett, a two-time national champion, a future first-round pick.
100, like,
It still
yeah,
could
like
be pretty
Carson Beck,
good.
yeah, 100%. I mean, cut you off there, Nick. I mean, Carson Beck might be the best quarterback in college football next year. Like, that's a
Yeah.
very plausible statement. And it sounds like, I mean, over at Dogs HQ, they were talking about that battle being back and forth really up until the spring game. So my thought process is if Brock Vandergriff is closer to what I think we expected Devin Leary to be with a little more mobility,
Hmm.
I could see it. And also, like Barry and Brown and Dane Keat, Nick, help me. Do they not exist anymore? Because like we get to this point in the year and people just forget that those individuals are like some of the best young receivers in college football. And I personally don't understand it. So that's my thought. I think Kentucky has a very plausible chance to be the best of that group. Also, like Stoops pretty much every third year now pops for like a 10-win season or so. This
Hmm.
is about that third year where it would happen. So that's
He's
my thought
due.
on it.
He's due. It's one of those you're not going to have to twist my arm to fall in line there. And I know, uh, especially with Dane and Berrien, like they kind of sophomore slump, but that they had their moments where they pop, particularly at the end. And now this is a pay year, right? Like
Yeah.
they're it's contract year, so you got to go out there and earn it. And then you add Jamori Macklin, who's a talented receiver from North Texas. So as Stoops would like to say, why not? Um, I the one thing too when you look at like I don't for South Carolina breaking in Lenora Sellers, I think that's just dangerous. You're breaking a new quarterback and you don't have a lot of runway. I think that's going to be tough. But Billy Napier, if he wasn't facing the schedule that he was facing, I think some people would be talking into second year Graham Mertz. Like they have a pretty decent roster. It's just that schedule is so daunting. Is is there a chance that we've got that he's playing for pink slips when Kentucky goes to the swamp, or is this Florida team good enough to be able to keep the crazy Gator fans at bay for at least another year until DJ Lagway gets his shot at the quarterback position?
Yeah, I think what you said is on the money. Like, how much are we grading my man on the curve? Because I've walked into plenty college classes where I'm walking in there and I'm walking out of the final and I'm like, y'all, I might fail this test. Like, I might legitimately be taking this class again this next semester. But then the curve of the final, it's like, well, hey, that final was really freaking hard, so we're gonna go ahead and bump your F minus up to a C. And it's like, all right, hey, C's get degrees, baby. Like, let's keep rolling. And I think that kind of has to be the logic you view this Billy Napier 2024 experience through is like, yes, they play like just a ridiculous schedule, especially in November. But if they can like make a bowl game, which again, the if is something that Florida fans are, not fond of having the if they can make a bowl game statement. So like I understand that. But if they can make a bowl game, maybe have a couple of billboard moments with a big win against, insert Florida State, or they beat Miami to start the year to kind of hold down their own in the state. I think that could be enough to kind of keep things rolling if you find yourself at 7-5, and it looks like the right 7-5.
That's a good point because not all 7-5s are created equally, especially in this new SEC. We've got to retrain our brains to just the new standards of college football when you've got these mega conferences. It's going to be completely different. I'm very fired up for it. You're talking about it 3 days a week on the hard count. And if y'all aren't subscribed, 2 on 3 on YouTube, go check it out. JD's putting out fire content all day. And here's the thing, JD. Part of the reason I wanted to have you on, you mentioned getting in the classroom. I think most people see your face when they go to post, and you've got the videos, the JW player videos are rolling, but I don't think they know the real JD Picell. And I don't really know the JD Picell. I knew you were a Cornell guy, you were going to classes, but I also didn't know that you were the the Louisville football jersey wearing guy either. I'd never seen that picture before today, and I think I've got it pulled up, not very well at least. But what? So how I need to know the JD Picell story on your rise to being a true program guy for
Sure.
On Three.
I appreciate. Well, one, I appreciate that intro. I mean, that's a heck of a label there to be true program guy here at On Three. But I mean, the story behind that Louisville picture is when I graduated school, I had one more year of eligibility to use. So I'm like, heck, man, I want to go walk on somewhere cool. Like, so I email legitimately every single FBS school in America, Kentucky included, and send them my highlights, send them my transcripts or my tape, whatever. Like, didn't hear back from most places. Kentucky, though, when Scott Satterfield had just taken the job, for some reason, they're like, "Hey, look at this kid. Let's go ahead and reply to his email and tell him he can walk on here if he wants to." So I paid my own way for an unofficial visit, very unofficial visit out to Louisville. And man, it was cool. Like, let me play dress up with that jersey, and I have that now forever on my on my phone. And ended up going to Baylor and doing that whole deal for the better part of their summer program and fall camp before I had to medically retire. It all worked out, but yeah, that's the story behind that picture. And it was a great visit, man. They were at that time a great staff, and I mean nothing but good things to say
Yeah,
about them, which
you
I
had
won't on this show, but good things.
the Gunter Brewer experience, which that guy, he was a real. He just his hats were a real trip. He would wear those big and almost flat billed hats, and he's like this little old man, and it's like I
Dude.
don't think that fits you very well. But so, but you were a Cali kid who went across the country to play at Cornell in the
Yep.
Ivy League. Was that an enormous culture shock?
Oh, dude, it was wild. Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, I go from wearing like, I mean, I was just like the typical California kid. I'm wearing like shorts to class. I'm wearing socks with no shoes. I'm wearing like tank tops. I'm a senior. I'm like, I'm the cool guy. I'm a senior, whatever. You go to Ithaca, New York, which is like 2 hours, hour and a half from the nearest civilization, which is Syracuse. Like, if you want to fly out of somewhere, you got to fly to, you got to get to Syracuse to fly to whatever major airport you want. Yeah, that was different. It was different. I was routinely the least intelligent person in every single classroom I walked into. And yeah, I mean, I graduated by the hair of my chinny chin chin, and here we are, man, doing absolutely nothing with my major, but it, lived to tell the tale.
I just can't imagine the feeling of walking into a classroom and just knowing you're not the smartest person in there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's one thing to have it happen like once in a blue moon, but I'd imagine just that you're a Cornell man. Like that's just they're all smart there. Like
Dude,
you're the
and the
football guy.
teachers know too. Dude, the teachers know, like, it is very obvious. Like, I'm in this lecture hall with, like, let's say 30, 40 kids. Like, probably 50% of the individuals in here are like dressed for a presentation, or they maybe just wear a button down every day just because from New York City. Like, I don't know. I'm in there in like sweats and a dry fit hoodie or a t-shirt or whatever. And like, whenever they want to cold call on somebody, they single you out because you stick out like a sore thumb. And they're like, "Hey, you know the answer?" I'm like, "You and I both know I don't know the answer to this. Like, do not cold call on me just to make fun of me in front of this massive lecture hall." So I mean, you take your lumps, but it all worked out.
Hey, it what doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, right? You know, it's the scars that get you to where you need to go. You did it, and now you're delivering the best college football takes on the internet. JD, appreciate you joining me today to hang out, just talk a little SEC football. We'll talk some more at SEC Media Days. I'll be bringing my cowboy hat, so I hope you're ready for that. We're going to Dallas. It should be a wild time, and can't wait to get all of us media folks together to just really chop it up.
In the most ridiculous manner possible. Can't wait. Appreciate you, man.
Awesome. JD Picell, we appreciate you joining 11 Personnel. And now I'm here to talk to you. Oh, it's Zach Kagan. He's right here. But I'm not talking to Zach just yet because I need to talk about Zach's best friend in the world. This isn't true, but we're big fans of Andy Ludicky from myperfectfranchise.net. He's gonna help you out. He's gonna hook you up. He's gonna make sure that if you're getting stuck in the doldrums of everyday life and you wanna change it up a little bit. Consider franchising. Andy, he's a huge college sports fan, huge football recruiting fan. So we're getting ready to talk here. But he's a veteran of the franchise business. He's owned multiple franchises and businesses. And using his expertise, he can help others find that American dream through a variety of consultation services. Hey, it's a great way to try to branch out, try something new. Just reach out to Andy. He's got a ton of knowledge in the world of franchising, and best of all, his services are 100% free to you. So reach out to him at Andy at myperfectfranchise.net or give him a call at 404-973-9901. Zach Gagan, what's up, man? Welcome to 11 Personnel.
Nick Roush, this is not familiar territory for me. I feel great. I shouldn't have worn my Seattle Supersonics shirt. That was probably a poor
Ooh,
choice.
yeah.
Yeah, this is not my. I'm more of a sources say guy, but I appreciate you bringing me along. I hope Adam is enjoying his. Where is Adam actually? I'm not entirely sure. Somewhere beach vacationing, hopefully enjoying himself.
He was drinking beers at Epcot at some point this week. So he really steered into the family vacation. He gets
Love it.
he gets a second child and is like, we got to get to Disney World. So
I love it.
Almost immediately. But here's the thing. We talk a lot of recruiting and there's a big recruiting weekend coming up. And Zach, I appreciate you when we brought Zach on, it was like, listen, we need to do more recruiting because Roush he doesn't give a damn. And it wasn't in those words exactly, but here's the thing. I hate cold calling kids. Or like DM sliding, and you had no fear. You had the hunger and the voraciousness of it. And now Jacob is making us look like real chumps because Jacob just
the cold call king.
He
cold
don't
call
give
king.
a damn.
It's impressive.
And he will go out on a limb and do whatever it takes, but I wanted to bring you on because you're sharing all sorts of knowledge on KSR Plus, and as everybody knows, UK1 will get you 2 months for free. And right now we got a big official visit weekend coming up. But I'm curious what your general thoughts of, like, it's May, we're getting ready to turn to June, and you and I and Jacob and we're all just kind of getting hyped up for what's to come. So what have been your overall impressions just of what's happened throughout the month of June for this Kentucky football recruiting effort?
Well, it definitely feels like the dice are starting to heat up, as Vince or whoever might want to say. I think this coming weekend is going to probably be another. Well, like you said, it's another huge one. We've got 8 big time visitors coming in, a couple of 4-stars. I think they're at 9 commits right now. So you want to. This is really the time where they're going to start building things up and trying to piece this class together bit by bit. It feels like this year is a little bit different than the last couple years, and just the fact that a lot of these kids seem to be committing a little bit earlier, like the second they get done with these OVs. I don't know if that's always been the case, but just me compared to the last couple of years I've been doing this, these kids are going on these OVs, and I'm sure NIL is a factor in there and all that, but things have definitely been moving faster than I anticipated. Because the big board that we've been working with, the big board that we had in middle of May looks nothing like it does right now for Kentucky's targets. So I think they're off to a great start, though. They're still kind of missing some of that star power. I know they've got a couple of big guys on board, like Quentin Simmons and a couple other 4-stars. But they really need to start really bringing in some of these or locking down some of these bigger recruits. And I think we're actually in store for some surprises here coming up. So hopefully we will. But I think UK they're in a good spot right now, but they just got to keep the ball rolling, and hopefully by July 4th we see a few of the Yahtzees popping up. I almost said boom. Sorry, my basketball brain almost talked to me there.
You get your wires crossed more than most with all the recruiting stuff, because there is something to be said for there's 9 guys on board, like that alone. Having 9 guys is significant, and that brings me to a question that we got from the guest board. And I don't have the exact verbiage pulled up right this second. So I'll just say what they said. Right now, Kentucky's ranked 23rd out of 25. How do we think this is shaping up? What do we think the final ranking is going to be?
Well, I think you've got you've got a guy like Cedric Works coming on this weekend for his OB. That's a guy that you really have to try and lock down and almost headline this class. Because if you
Yeah.
don't get guys like him, they're probably going to just hover around in that 23 range. When you think about it, 23 is not really bad, but then when you look at the SEC rank and you see that they're 11th, that's when it gets a little worrisome. But I think I do, like I said, I think like there's a guy like Andrew Marsh just came off his official visit. If that went really well and you can somehow manage to lock up a guy like that, he's like a top 60s, top 70 kid in the country. Those are guys that can really capitalize or headline your classes here. And I think they've got a couple of those guys that are slowly but surely inching towards their way.
See, and you really hit it, is how many of the midweek official visitors can they get? Andrew Marsh,
Well,
who you know, from Texas, huge receiver recruit nationally. Texas has offered him. I don't think he OB'd at LSU, but Texas and Oklahoma seem to be the top two.
I believe he's going to Michigan now this weekend instead of Oklahoma. I'm supposed to try and talk to him later today, so I'll be able to confirm that. But I believe that's going to be the case with him.
But he's a big one. Christian Gass, 4-star linebacker from Georgia, who has a Georgia offer. That's a big one. Dwayne Galloway, he doesn't have the Ohio State offer. He's from Columbus. They've already got 2 5-star cornerbacks. That's a big one we felt good about for a while, but you've got the Wiltfong putting in the RPM pick for Purdue after he officially visited there. So to your point, a lot of this is if you're either in the 20 to 25 range, I think they're going to be in there almost regardless, just based on the amount of 4-stars they're probably going to get. But the ceiling is going to be determined by how many of those guys do they get. How many more can they get? What helped last year is you had the Smith twins. It was a package 4-star deal. So you get 2 of them to help kind of goose those numbers. But in I think the one part too for the casual fan that I like reminding them is, no, recruiting at a top 25 level is very good. And you're probably just not going to get, like, it's just there's a hard ceiling at Kentucky because you don't have just they aren't growing on trees here like they are in some of these other places. It's just it's built in there. In Florida, you're just built in with top 15 classes just by getting average players from your own home state. So yeah, But another person asked, and this is what I really wanted to get to. From a Blue Wildcat. You mentioned Cedric Works. He asked about our confidence level there. I feel pretty good about CJ Works. It's a kind of an unusual recruitment because, Zach, how many Ohio guys is Vince recruiting against? And it's Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, and then you're like, well, let's hope Ohio State doesn't actually offer him. Yeah. Right? I mean, that's par for the course. Penn State's involved, but Florida's making a strong push, and then Cincinnati is trying to keep him home. Which, I mean, Scott Satterfield, really, come on. Well, I feel good about where Kentucky is with Cedric Works.
Yeah, and it's like you said, because you're not battling currently, at least, with the Ohio States and the Michigans for that guy, and kind of the same thing with Dwayne Galloway, who's, like you said, it's kind of just Purdue seems to be the top competition, and if you're asking me, I think you even mentioned it on the board the other day, if you're asking me to place a wager between Purdue's staff and Vince Marrow, who's going to come out on top, I'm probably going to lean Vince Marrow. But one thing I kind of wanted to mention is I think UK is going to do really well locking up guys that'll keep their floor low, or a floor high, I should say, like keeping a high floor, like maybe even if things kind of go poorly, I don't think they're going to get worse than like a top 30 class or something like that. Because you're trying to find some of these hidden gems, like you got a guy like Preston Bowman. We could talk about how DeKel Shorts is just recruiting pretty much every wide receiver that he can get his hands on right now. Or you've got a couple of guys, unranked guys that are coming on this weekend, or you've got like a Jermeel Atkins type guy who's like kind of a lower end 3-star, but 6'8". Like you and I saw him in person, he was every bit of 6'8". And that's kind of how we've seen Kentucky just makes their bread and butter, is a lot of taking some of those under the radar guys and developing them. So that's why I do think they'll end up being fine in terms of their floor. But the ceiling is going to be like, if you can land a guy like CJ Works, because the competition is not all that there. And there's a couple of guys like that where you're not really fighting off the Ohio States and the Michigans. Like another guy like DeMarcus Gardner, who's committed to Central Florida. He's came off his official visit. If you can land a guy like him, maybe kind of another little diamond in the rough type situation. You're not really battling some of the bigger schools for him. So Nicholas Smith is a guy that's coming in this weekend too. Jason Ekpero, I believe is his name. Guys like that will keep the floor high enough, I think, that you can feel confident enough. But it's all going to come down to, can you land a guy like CJ Works or Andrew Marsh or whatever other top 150 guy?
Well, and that goes back to when you're recruiting at some positions, you're going to be taking swings on size and traits, and they don't have the best rankings. That Ekpero guy, offensive tackle, officially visiting this weekend. I don't know if he has another offer, and I don't know if the Kentucky one's committable.
6'6", 340.
Right. Yeah. So you're taking some swings on a few guys, and you know what? Some of those guys, like, oh man, the text I got from you on July 4th last year, because Kentucky, like, it was slow last year, and we didn't expect any announcements. And you said, I think they're going to get a commitment from Quaysheed Scott, and I said, Quaybody who? Like, that's not a real person. And this guy that Chris Collins went and found ends up being a top 500 target, right? A top 500 recruit. What I think is significant is making sure that your, top 10 players in your class are all in that top 500 range, and that 7 of them end up becoming starters, because that's what you're fishing for here. You're trying to find starters, and if you can find 7 to 10 starters in every high school class, that's great, right? Like that, because a lot of guys are transferring in and out. You're going to have to get some from the portal. You mentioned something with the receivers. Let's have a discussion now about this receiver, because
there's a dozen out there.
Well, okay,
maybe more.
2 on the board right now: Quentin Simmons and Jacaden Ferguson, top 500 guy from Texas, had that
Texas
awesome
boy.
catch. Yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, Zach. I think I may have erred when I put a pick in for Quisenberry, because at the time we were like, I don't know how many guys that got on their board, and then 4 more guys have since officially visited, and he has not as of yet. So can we rattle through some of them?
Well, here I know we've got Bowman, Marsh, Quisenberry, like you've talked about, DJ Miller, who is officially visiting this weekend. That's a big one. I think UK is actually in a really good spot with him currently. I think he took an Ole Miss visit not too long ago, and he didn't commit. With some of these guys, when they don't commit on their visits, it makes you feel a little bit better that Kentucky has some juice still left in him. So I do think DJ Miller's a guy that they're going to be looking after. You've got the Arkansas commit coming in this weekend.
Kid too. DJ Miller's like 6'3", moves pretty well, from East St. Louis. He's a good looking player. There's another SEC team that he OV'd as well, and just we talk about stacking up commitments. Kentucky's this is the last weekend for official visits, period. So Kentucky's getting the last swing on all of these guys, which it's like, oh, I didn't know DJ Miller how good of a puncher's chance they had, but they certainly do getting the last swing at things this weekend. But by all means, proceed.
But another guy, Samari Reed, he's OV'd as well. But then you've got the Arkansas commit, Kamari Williams. I believe you broke that scoop as well, that he's going to be taking an official visit this weekend. And he committed not too long ago, I think in May or middle of May or something like that. So not long ago at all. Those are guys that you can probably flip a little bit easier, as opposed if they've been locked in for a year or something, just from what I feel like I've seen over the years of doing this. But like you're saying, like a guy like Preston Bowman and Quisenberry, like UK's been recruiting both of those guys for 3 years now. But they're both still kind of flying. Like, they've never really been fully takes until maybe a couple weeks ago. And it seems like Bowman is the guy that they're focusing in now, as opposed to Quisenberry. But yeah, I honestly, just the job that DeKel Shorts has been doing, I think, is really impressive. Just coming in day one, being a young guy, using his Texas connections and stuff like that. Because I think they have a legitimate chance with a guy like Andrew Marsh. You've talked about, probably, I'm sure, the connection with Jacaden Ferguson. Those guys are tight. That can only help. You just had Andrew Marsh here on his OV. So I think Shorts is doing a great job with his, expanding his range out there and really putting Kentucky into places that they haven't really been lately.
And my worry was when Collins first arrived. It's kind of similar, except Collins was coming from Georgia State instead of Houston. but he got a lot of guys on campus, but wasn't able to close.
Mhm.
That was just and it was a kid from Florida who was a 4-star DB that ends up going to Florida. Like, he got some big name guys, but none of them were committing. Getting Ferguson around, now you don't feel as okay. The proof of concept is here, and you're not going to get all of these guys that you're officially visiting. You're probably getting, I would say, 4 receivers in this class, so
Mhm.
2 more. And this is the point where, and that's kind of how you get some of the commits too. Is, hey, we've only got X amount of spots. Who's going to take it?
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll put that squeeze on them by any means, but if you look at the roster, I mean, Kentucky's top 3 projected players, pass catchers, are going to be gone after this year, most likely.
Right.
Dane Key, William Brown, Jamori Macklin. And they're already a little light at receiver, so they're going to go heavy. And it's reflective of that on the official visit sheet. And I'm just, when you go down that line, you look at all of them, and I think even the harshest critic would say, oh, yeah, that's an SEC football player. That's an SEC football player. That's an SEC football player. So I do like the job they've done this June with the wide receiver position. A couple quick hitters here. Walker Yaw, he asked who was a good comp for Cedric Works, and he's got some Jordan Wright nose for the ball too. That's just I haven't dove in as deep as I'd like to, but that's that's a good. That's my just high level.
He's
Haven't
got
dove in
great
enough to say.
size.
Yeah,
Really good
6'4",
size on that kid.
220. His his move, like, he just moves very fluid, and I know that can be a very just hacky way to, but like, he moves like somebody who just is going to. I mean, it's Fearbury-esque, where you're like, oh, this guy just plays like an athlete. Whereas like Nicholas Smith, the other edge they recruited, he's got some developing to do, right? Like, he's
Yeah.
got like he's like 6'6", 6'7" with these long arms, but he stands up. Like, he's got a lot of stuff to work on. CJ Works is fluid as hell, man. That guy, he needs to gain some weight, but he's one who can operate in space at the SEC level. There's no doubt in my mind. The SEC first, Zach, he's on our board a lot, and there's a lot of people who aren't the biggest
He
fans
sure
of
is
him.
on our board a lot.
Yeah, and you know what? Here's the thing I like about SEC first. He's the guy who sometimes he can come across as negative, but he's just matter of fact. But he's also very positive when we share good news. If we got scoop, he's like, hell yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like the Kamari Williams news, he was fired up for that. So,
Well, his thing is he doesn't want Kentucky recruiting guys that aren't ranked, which is like, you understand that if you're a Kentucky fan, you want to go after guys that are ranked and that are ranked highly and that are going to boost up your score and stuff. So
it makes sense. He wants all the good players. I mean, you can't get them all.
yeah,
but in his question, I think is a good one about why there are so few defensive line targets visiting, and he said it's 2 years in a row without a ton of D-line targets with size making it to campus. We got a big one coming in this weekend, Mr. Gagan.
literal big one, huge one. Yeah, Kalen Edwards. I believe Louisville's in contention for him as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's a decommit from where?
Auburn. So
Auburn.
He went to the Iron Bowl. He got drunk on the Kool-Aid, even though they lost at the last second to Alabama. That was a wild ass game. But he commits. The D-line coach ends up going to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
But Zach, you see him. He's what, 6'3", 340.
He's listed it on three. He's got him 6'4", 325.
Yeah, that's a big kid, right?
That's a big kid. Well, and then you've got the JUCO kid too on the defensive line.
D-Jack.
Yeah, his name is escaping
Jackson
me.
Is how I would pronounce it.
Yeah,
he
that's
would
more
be
probably an immediate impact type guy, or maybe a plug and play type situation with him more.
He's show up and be a backup at nose so that we don't have to play Dion snaps at nose.
Yeah.
But in here, the short answer to this question, SEC first, is there ain't a lot of them, right? Like there's not a lot of kids out there. Quentin Bohanna was just such a great find. I mean, this kid from Memphis who is only a 3-star ends up being able to move at that size. It's just finding guys who can carry that weight but also move that weight around. They're tough to find. But you as lucky as like to point out, they've won a lot of recruiting battles with Auburn as of late.
Mhm.
They just got Martellus Carter. This is a big one, and this one's just as important, if not more important, because there's so few options out there. So I don't think he has a timetable by any means, but this is definitely one of those like, all right, let's be on our best for Kalen Edwards, because finding talented defensive tackles like that, it's hard to get in on the good ones. Kentucky's in on one right now. They need to be able to close. And you know what? The other one too, like I can't be too harsh on defensive line when it's like Javion Campbell. He's kind of fallen into their lap.
I think Kentucky's going to get some good news with him whenever that eventually pops. So
Yeah, it's like, and that goes back to
Alabama wants that kid.
But how many times? I mean, you don't get guys like that just popping up out of Frankfurt all the time. When the
Right.
Big Blue Wall became the Big Blue Wall, it's because Drake Jackson and Landon Young lived in Lexington. You know, I mean, which Zach, how come you couldn't gain 70 pounds and play for Kentucky?
I actually had one of my buddies, a really good friend of mine. He wrestled against Landon Young in the state championship, and that was his only loss of the season was to Landon Young.
Yeah,
but my buddy is also 5'10", so I don't know how they even matched up together or whatnot, but it worked out that way. So it didn't seem like it was a fair matchup in the first place.
It's Derrick Henry, the Derrick Henry meme, standing next to Mark Ingram at the
yeah. When you think you're big, but you're really not.
Oh man. Derrick Henry, enormous human. Zach, you got an NFL team?
I grew up cheering for the Bengals, and then Carson Palmer's knee got snapped in half by the Steelers, and then I kind of got out of it for a little bit.
Fair enough.
I do cheer for the Bengals though. If I have to pick a team, like I was rooting for them in the Super Bowl, because I'm a big Joey Ice, whatever the hell nickname you want to call it. I like him. So, but usually I'm at the point now in the NFL where I'm just looking for UK guys, following the UK guys. Love to watch Wandell whenever he gets out there.
I know you all hold down the fort for us on Sundays, but do you have Red Zone on?
I do. I don't pay for it, but I have Red Zone.
But is that I guess because my thing is like I keep up with the NBA on Twitter, whereas you will watch it. I keep up with it for the fun shenanigans. Are you one of those who's like, oh, NFL game's on? Yeah, we're gonna watch this.
Well, if I'm honest, it's mostly because I have my fantasy team and I just want to win in my fantasy team. So I'll usually kind of focus on those guys. But I do have Red Zone on, and whenever I'm working on Sundays, I've got my TV up here, so I'll always I'll be watching all the games and usually just refreshing my ESPN app to make sure that I'm beating all my buddies in our free league that we've been doing for a decade now. But that's about and it's easier with the NFL too. It's just one day, and
right.
The NFL is trying to take over every single day and bump the NBA off of Christmas. That's a whole other beef I've got with Goodell. But
I love it. It's great. More football, less.
Yeah, I know your NBA thoughts. That's why I wore this. Actually, I did it on purpose.
CC2 asks, how's the 2026 in-state talent? You want to break it to him, Zach? You want to break it?
I don't know of any like big names off the top of my head, to be perfectly honest with you. There's definitely no Javion. Well, that's the thing is like Javion Campbell, what was it, 2 or 3 months ago, had no offers, just some big kid from Frankfurt that no one really knew about. And now he's, kind of blown up, or it might have been longer than that. But, these kids can all just really pop up out of nowhere. So I'm not too worried about that. But whatever kids do surface, like UK is going to go get them. So Vince will.
My thing is the 27 class is loaded. So, that's
there's a lot of Trinity kids in the 27 class. I know that. A lot of Trinity kids, Louisville kids, just in general. Bunch of them up there, 27.
Then Seneca Driver, we saw him. That guy's going to be a huge recruit.
Well, Boyle County has 2 6'6", 27 tight ends. That's not going to be fair moving forward. Seneca Driver is that kid's going to be, want to talk about a potential top 150 recruit coming out of Danville, Kentucky. I think you've got one there. Probably, you could pick either of those guys, honestly. Just depends on how they continue to develop. Maddox Hager, I think is his name, or Hager Maddox, something like that.
Maddox Hager, I believe.
Maddox Hager, yeah.
Then there's the kid from Corbin too. Was he?
Eli Petrowski.
Yes, he's 26 or is he 27? He's 27.
He might be a 27, yeah. But he's got the UK offer. He's another big kid from Corbin. So I think all these tight ends are 6'5", 6'6".
Yeah. The CC2, there's a kid from St. X, Marlon Harbin, that's pretty good, but I don't have my eyes on a ton of them. But the 27 class is going to be very good.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know about Lexington, but I know Louisville has a bunch of those 27 kids. They were all camping at UK over the last week or so, or whatever it was. So
yeah, the DB he's going to be a ball player.
Oh yeah,
Sekou. Yeah, he's going to be
oh yeah,
he's going to be a ball
Adam
player.
Luckett's a big fan of him.
Yeah. Finally, Devin Hunt want to know how many do we take in the class? I'm not really sure, but here's the one, Devin, that I think is a good one. Who's the next likely commitment for the Cats? So who is the next commitment, Mr. Gagan?
Well, I think I would just keep a close eye on the kids that are coming to campus this weekend.
Yep. Especially the one that says he's committing on it, like he's going to announce his commitment on his official visit. So that's why you should be on
which is scheduled for tomorrow. By the way.
So there's one in Nicholas Smith.
But I think they're in great shape with. I think they're in great shape with Jameel Atkins, the kid that's coming this weekend as well. Like I keep saying, I don't have an RPM pick or anything, but I think there is a legitimate chance with a guy like Andrew Marsh. That could take a while though before it actually pops.
Here's something that you've got to be tricky with Andrew Marsh, and it's something that I know a lot of people aren't thinking about right now. You can't be the team that just drives up the nil price because he's one of those that you just gotta play. It's a very delicate tiptoe around, but I think it's clear that Kentucky is going to be in it for the long haul. We'll see.
Jamarcus Gardner's another guy that I think UK is probably he's still currently committed to UCF, but that's another guy that I think UK is probably in good shape with. The Brody Lennon recruitment seems weird right now because he now had Brody Lennon. He now has the Ohio State offer, but
that's a bummer. I'm not feeling great
because I think UK was in the driver's seat with that kid until I guess he did well enough at the camp to get the offer. So we'll see with him. But you got those the Desert twins. I think that's how you say it. I think those are another guy that UK's in good shape with.
They're like the biggest.
Preston Bowman.
The Desir twins, and I'm saying Desir because Desert just sounds. I don't know.
Desert does sound wrong. Desir is probably right.
But it's just I find it odd that maybe it's because there's one brother's better than the other and they don't want to take on both, and that's why the big three down at Florida haven't really gone all in. UCF's gone all in, and so maybe it's a question of do I want to ride the Gus bus or do I want to play in the SEC for them? On Tuesday,
Isaac Sowles.
Oh yeah, which I think he's doing the 4th of July. All right, Tuesday's coming around, Zach. How many new players are in Kentucky's football recruiting class?
I'll say that 2. I'll give them 2 by Tuesday.
I'm going with 3, maybe 4.
Ooh, okay.
So
when is July 4th? Let me look at my calendar here.
No, yeah, we got 2 weeks, and there'll be a lot more by then. But I think Kentucky's going to get 3 commitments this weekend. I feel good about 3, maybe a 4. And so,
there's 2 that I'm all in on, and I'm going to take the Nick Roush optimism there, and I'll say let's go for it. Let's say 4, 5.
Oh wow!
No, we'll say 3.
Wow. Okay.
We'll meet in the middle and just go with 3.
Well, I'm probably going to put an RPM pick later today on KS board. More intel. UK1 will get you 2 months for $1. Appreciate you all joining along with us. And I said this on Twitter. I'm going to say it here again too. I'm one of those that I don't always check other people's stuff because I got enough stuff to do. But the other day I was looking around. I was like, dude, we're kicking everyone's ass. So if you like football recruiting, it admittedly it was a weak suit of mine for a long time. I was not good at it. We're getting info before everybody else is. We're talking to the kids between Zach, Jacob, Luckett, and myself. We're the best out there right now. So we appreciate you following us along. Appreciate you following us on Twitter. Zach, I appreciate all your hard work. And thanks for hanging out with me and doing a little 11 personnel. Whom stood have thunk that one day Zach Gagan would be on a football podcast talking ball? Zach Gagan, right?
Oh,
Look at him.
there. That's
Who
the
would
Nick Roush new nickname. I like it. Yeah, it's the meme with the who would look at us, look at
Yeah.
us. Who would have thought? Not me.
No. And thank you all so much for dealing with me early on in this interview because I don't know if you've ever done this, Zach, on a podcast, but I had the YouTube pulled up in a separate window to social media and forgot I left it up. So I was hearing the echo like
Ooh.
I was like, I'm going to have to do this whole interview hearing everything that's being said 5 seconds later. My brain was just like, so
You did a great Stephen Peak job today. Well, not as good as Stephen, but you tried, and
that's all we can do.
all I can ask from you.
Yeah, Jace, we're out on Tavian Wallace. Yeah, he's going to Florida State.
Yeah, he's a Florida State kid, unfortunately.
Which I don't get. My dad had that question too. He's like, "Why do kids want to play at Florida State? Don't they know the ACC is folding?" And I'm like, "I don't. You're asking me to use logic on teenagers. Do teenagers have logic? No.
NIL, transfer portal, it's everything. Common sense does not ring as true as it used to.
No, it never has, never will. Zach, thanks for
Never has,
joining
that's
us.
true.
We'll be back next week. Luckett will be back to kind of recap a big recruiting significant times, and we'll have some more regular football stuff to talk. I know not everybody's in recruiting, so hopefully we'll have some other friends of the program come on and join 11 personnel. But appreciate y'all hanging out with this week, and as always, go Cats and go Kroger.
Go Kroger.